back to Bob's Little Sports Shop. I'm Jeremiah, and today we're going to talk about Aerospine. As you can see here, I got two different arrows. These arrows are going to be the same make and model. They are Gold Tip Velocity XTs. This one here has the number 300. We're going to get into what that means. That's essentially the spine, but I'm going to explain that in depth. Here we have one that says 340. So these are two different spines. What exactly is spine? Spine is going to be the stiffness of an arrow. So it's going to be basically how much that arrow flexes when it's shot. Now, they're all tested under the same standards to determine spine across the board for all these arrows, although how much your arrow actually flexes is going to be determined by your bow setup and things like inserts we have here, point weight, we have different point weights here, your draw length and draw weight. Those are going to be what determine what spine you should have, but we're going to have a starting point. These spines are going to be, there's a testing system that they use across the board for all their arrows to have a spine. That's a starting point. They also use spine charts, which are going to use things like your draw length, draw weight. Sometimes they account for point weight as well to determine what spine arrow you're going to get. So it's really important that your arrow is properly spined. But anyway, getting into what spine actually is besides just the stiffness. So you can see the number here. We have 300, and on this one we have 340. The higher the number is, the weaker the arrow is. It means it's going to flex a lot more. That number is going to represent how much it's going to flex under pressure. So the reason why that's going to be important is because your bowstring is going to come right here and it's going to press against the back of the arrow. So you have all this force applied here. Then what you're going to have is some type of insert and some kind of point or broadhead that you have on the front end. Well, this weight here does not want to move. It's going to resist the movement of this force applied here. When the force is applied here, the arrow wants to go forward. The point weight here is going to resist that movement. So what happens? The center of the arrow gives, and this creates what we call Archer's paradox, where your arrow actually flying straight, it actually does this in flight. What's going to determine how much it flexes is going to be, like I said, the spine. It's going to be the draw weight, draw length, and then also your components that you use. So getting into the components, we have some inserts right here. Some people, if you're a target shooter, you're going to use just glue-in points. Right here I'm using screw-in points. This is popular for hunting setups because you can screw in a field point like you see here, practice with those arrows, and then when you're ready to go hunting you can unscrew the field point and screw in a broadhead. We have different weight inserts here, and this is also going to affect what spine you use. Here, this first one here, this is going to be between 12 and 25 grains. This is a standard insert made of aluminum. This is another aluminum insert. You can see it's a lot larger. This is about a 50 grain insert. And then here, this is brass. This is a 100 grain insert. Inserts are made of a lot of different materials. It depends on the make and model of the arrow. Some of them use titanium inserts, some of them use aluminum, some use brass. And it also depends on what weight you want to choose. The point of a weighted insert is to increase the forward weight on your arrow. And what it does, the effect that it has, is going to be that it causes more resistance here, and it causes the arrow to flex more than it would with a lighter insert. So more weight here means more resistance to the force applied in the back. But the point of that is to create more of what we call FOC, or forward of center. So we want most of the weight of an arrow to be in the front. We don't want arrows to be perfectly balanced in the middle. We actually want them to be a little front heavy. Whatever percentage you choose is up to you, and there's a lot of different trends going around for different percentages and things like that. But generally you want the front of your arrow to be heavier than the back of your arrow, and that's going to give you a lot better penetration on contact, and it tends to pull the arrow from the front end. Creates better flight, generally speaking. So you want it to be balanced to the front end to some extent. So anyway, these different insert weights are going to affect that, as well as point weights. Whatever combination you choose is completely up to you, and that's going to be based on things like if you want to go with a heavier insert so that you can use a lighter point and in turn use a more common broadhead, say a 100 grain broadhead. The points that I have here, this is 100 grain, 125 grain, and 150 grain. If you use 150 grain point, then you want to use 150 grain broadheads. Depending on which point you decide to use, that's going to determine what broadhead you use. So if you don't want to be limited to 150 grain broadheads, then you'd use a 100 grain point and a heavier insert. And that's if you wanted to do a heavier front end. But as I was saying, the more weight that you put in the front here, what it's going to do in turn is it's going to weaken up your arrow. It's going to make your arrow less stiff when it fires because you have more resistance here the same force applied here, and it's going to flex that arrow more. What that means is that you need to get a stiffer arrow than you normally would have with, say, a standard insert and 100 grain point. This is going to be one of the most common setups right here, just like your standard insert and 100 grain point, 12 to 25 grains depending on the make and model, and that's going to be what's most common for arrow setups, but some people get into heavier front end. But another thing to keep in mind, one thing spine is not, it is not weight. Although it does affect the weight of the arrow, it's not the weight. One thing we'll see here is right along here, it says GPI 8.8. What that is grains per inch. Those grains per inch, we do that because arrows come full length, they're uncut, so arrows don't come in different lengths, they come in generally one length for that make and model, and you cut the arrow to length for that shooter. They use a grains per inch weight system, so that way you can calculate the weight of your arrow at the cut length, because not everybody's going to shoot an arrow at the same length. So the 300 you see, one thing it's not 300 grains. Same thing in this, not 340 grains. That's the spine. It's a unit of measurement for stiffness, and different companies have ways of doing that. So like I said before, it does have some relation to weight. It does affect the weight, I should say. So the 300 spine is an 8.8 GPI, and the 340 spine, being a weaker spine, is an 8.2 GPI. Whenever you have a weaker arrow, it tends to be a lighter weight by a little bit, and whenever you have a stiffer arrow, it tends to be a little bit heavier. And that's just going to be because to make the arrow stiffer, you need to use more material. So in effect, that's going to make the arrow a little bit heavier. So that's basically it. That's how you figure out what kind of spine you're going to use. Try to use the spine chart. Take these variables into account. So make sure you keep that in mind along with your draw weight and draw length. You can use that with a spine chart, although spine charts do not account for heavier inserts. And usually they only cover 100 and 125 grain points. If you're having trouble, you can always call here at the shop and ask a little bit about how that'll affect your spine for your specific situation. But that's how you determine spine, and that's what spine is. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions, or if you guys have any comments you'd like to leave below, feel free to do so. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, give us a like, comment, and subscribe. Also, look for spine charts like this whenever you're just looking for an arrow in relation to whatever arrow you're picking up. The spine chart's going to be on the back of the box, and good luck.